Jim Sterling, second greatest YouTuber of all time, recently spoke about Unity and how it has an image problem. To condense it all down, people who make rubbish games typically use the free version of Unity, which is the only edition that displays the Unity logo upon starting up the game. This means that people associate Unity with rubbish games, since any decent game made on it uses the paid version and doesn't have to show the world that it's made on Unity. Therefore, Unity equals bad games, even though great games like City Skylines and Hearthstone were made on it. And probably some other ones as well, though admittedly I'm struggling to think of them. But it doesn't matter. The point is, good games can be made on Unity, which means that a bad game should be blamed more on the team making it than the engine that it's built upon. This applies to every game, regardless of the game engine used. So why target Unity? Because it's one of the most popular, free and easy game makers out there. It has lowered the barrier of entry for game development and, as such, has fallen victim to all of the rubbish games that were previously avoided by being too hard for the developers to make. With Unity, anybody can load it up and within a couple of minutes have a playable, if rubbish, arena shooter. I see this as a topic of debate, rather than a clear-cut issue of Unity being good or bad. Let me explain. Back when I started mapping, I didn't like the tutorials available to learn from. They were long and inflated, far more complicated than they needed to be. So I made my own series, deliberately kept shorter and simpler than any others. As a result, they got rather popular, and also got a lot of people into mapping who otherwise wouldn't have. I lowered the barrier of entry for mapping. The result was that a horde of new mappers proudly posted their first level over on Facepunch's forums, and my name quickly became associated with said rubbishy first maps. I was the Unity of the mapping scene. Of course, the people on those forums saw it as a simple case that I was bad and was encouraging bad maps. My shortcuts taught bad habits, and my simpler tutorials were lowering map standards across the board, which made them bad for the mapping community. Plain and simple. Perhaps unsurprisingly, being the maker of those tutorials, I saw it slightly differently. I accept that I was responsible for many bad first maps, but argued that it was an unavoidable price to pay to get more people into mapping. Many of these people would never have made a map otherwise, and no doubt there were plenty of people who got into it from my tutorials who eventually became good at mapping. And I say eventually because you don't just get good at something from watching a tutorial, no matter how good that tutorial is. You get good through practice and experience. A tutorial is there to get you up to a stage where you're able to dabble and to be able to make the important choices yourself. Likewise, you can't just download Unity, a few examples and custom props, and expect for it to be a good game. Something that asset flips have shown us time and time again. Blaming Unity is downright dismissive and disrespectful of what a success the program has been. Sure, it's an easy scapegoat for when something bad is made. It may be a recurring name that's featured in so many bad games, but I see it as a symptom of Unity's success as a game maker, rather than as a gauge of its quality as one. Hell, I don't even blame the people making the games until they behave immaturely to criticism. I see the problem being that bad games get more publicity than they have any right to in the form of being accepted onto platforms such as Steam. An issue that Jim Sterling has raised awareness to for years before strangely putting a U-turn in his latest video and pointing the finger, at least partially, at Unity for allowing such a game to be made in the first place. I don't think the question is whether Unity is a good game maker. I don't think it's even whether they should be involved in the games made using it. The real question, I think, is whether lowering the barrier as low as Unity has done is worth the price. Because doing so will result in a lot more bad games and only a few more good ones. At least in the short term. Of course I think it's worth it, as it's not just easier but also faster to make things with an easy game maker. I personally use Fusion myself, and time again I'm told to move to a better game maker. These people who tell me to say it with good intentions, but I know that they're just basing Fusion's limitations on the games they've seen made for it, rather than how good the program itself is. Having used it myself, I know the program's limitations are well beyond what I, as a lone game developer, will ever reach. And as a lone game developer, I'll be able to achieve more with Fusion than I ever will with a more complex game maker because it is faster to make things with Fusion. Put simply, the likes of Fusion and Unity are easier and faster to develop with, but you have a lower ceiling than perhaps the likes of Unreal or CryEngine. But be realistic and ask what you'll reach first, because I bet it's your own ability and patience that holds you back more than the limitations of the program you use. Confident people intimidate me. When people confidently tell me that I should be using another game maker, I assume they've properly factored in what I'm making, that they know about Fusion and its limitations, and also know that something else would be better for me to use. The truth is that these people probably don't know what they're talking about. They see the world in simple black and white, with coding in C++ being the solution to everything because bigger games are never limited by it. They probably also assume that Unity's to blame for every bug in every game made using it, even if they've never touched the program themselves. They know so little that there's very little they know they don't know. You may think it's hypocritical for me to talk about it since I also have limited experience with Unity. But hear me out. Poor quality games have telltale signs to them. Unity has slippery movement and dodgy animations. Although I don't make games in Unity, I do make them with Fusion, which also has slippery movement and dodgy animations, if you use the built-in tools. Truth is, I still use these built-in features when I start on a project because they're good enough for the concept stage. Later on, when the game gets better, I then replace them with my own designs that don't have the same limitations. It's just that takes time and effort. I'm pretty sure the same applies to Unity. Clearly, people who make rubbish games with Unity don't bother doing this and just stick to the pre-made movement, which gamers then think is Unity's fault rather than the developers themselves. So anyway, like I said, I think that lowering the barrier of entry is worth it. There's just got to be a way of filtering out the good from the bad games that are developed using Unity. And this is where I disagree with Jimmy's unlikely recommendation. He suggests that Steam and Unity work together in some vague way, but doesn't propose how exactly such a collaboration would solve the issue. Here's what I propose. Yes, by all means, Unity should remove the compulsory screen in their free version to distance themselves from low-effort games. But I think that, more importantly, they should actively nurture and encourage the better titles that are made on the platform, working with the developers and ensuring that such games show the engine in the best possible light, and to actually be the ones advertising the games made, similar to how Nvidia shows games that use their GameWorks tech. Or perhaps Unity could create montages from promising Unity games, similar to what Unreal and CryEngine already do. Or perhaps they should take it upon themselves to make their own game using their engine to show the world what it's capable of. Unplayable tech demos simply don't cut it anymore. That ensures that the good titles have the best chance they have of getting out there. As for the bad titles, well, they're going to be made. They're an inevitable side effect from Unity's low barrier of entry, and I don't see it as their job to ensure that these titles never see the light of day. And I don't see a problem with bad games. I've made many bad games, and had a lot of fun making them and sharing them with my friends and family. Why should all games using Unity have to be made with the intention of being sold on Steam? The problem only arises when the developer thinks their bad, unpolished or unfinished game is worthy of a place on Steam, and doubly so when Steam allows them to do so. And judging from Jim's earlier videos, I'm amazed that he doesn't see this as being solely Steam's fault. I don't see Unity as being any more accountable for the bad games made using it, as Tesco's are for whatever food is made using the kitchenware that they sell. Sure, if good chefs use their stuff, then by all means, promote them. But don't waste your time trying to stop the bad ones. So yeah, Unity may be responsible for a lot of bad games, but it also brought us Cities Skylines. Source may be old and dated and sorely requiring a second edition for a particular third game, but it still enabled the excellent Titanfall 2. And Fusion may be but a humble 2D game maker, but it still brought about Destruction Darius 2, the greatest game of all time. But hey, that is but my honest, humble, and most excellent opinion. I'd like to thank Mr. Sterling for originally raising this issue. I hope that you find somebody with a lot of spandex. And until next time, thank for me.